Officially
It's like a year.
call this meeting to order. Do I have the rest of it? Yeah. Could you roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mayor Lottick,
Here.
Schultz,
Here.
Lada,
Here.
Cruz,
Here.
Paul Baker,
Here.
Danfield,
Present.
Chrisman, here, Dunn. Here. All members are present.
Thank you. So just quick recap, work sessions, much more informal. We don't have the formalities of kind of the normal Robert's rules. I did want to mention a few things though, that kind of housekeeping kickoff. You see this new fancy thing here in the middle, that is our new recorder. So it has much better surround audio. Staff has tested it out the last couple of weeks to make sure it's all set to go, so it'll be able to record everything. We also have the normal recorder going just in case technical difficulties never happen. So we've got a couple things on the agenda for tonight, College Hill Vision Zoning. We'll spend about 60 minutes on that, and then Director Burry is gonna do an update on the animal control. Otherwise, everyone's good for it. We'll just jump into it. And I've asked Stephanie to just give a quick kind of 5-minute recap on kind of the background of College Hill Vision Plan, especially since we have so many new people. Just on what were some of the things that prompted it, how we got to where we are, just so we can help level set. You, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, all right. So, I have 2 slides that show a couple projects that were maybe precursors to, our zoning work, and visioning work that kicked off before that. These aren't really inclusive of all the different projects. We had a lot of little projects where I had issues, but some of you may remember kind of the pink building issue and the controversy about that with color. So I tried to highlight kind of what were the major concerns that happened in the year of that. Hampton Inn, a lot of debate about the height, whether was that appropriate or not. We had other people provide renderings of what they thought the architecture should look like. So lots of discussion about the materials and the architecture on that building. In the Hill area, urban flats, as many people probably recall, the use, and so therefore the parking calculation and whether parking was required or not became a large focus for that project. And then later in 2019, with the project on College Street, the height, the use, the parking were all concerns. So a lot of those just really pointed to there's a need for better clarity in our ordinance, but to get there, you need to talk about what does the community want? And so that's why the visioning came forward. So I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but can certainly provide this to anybody. This just kind of shows the list of activities that happened in terms of very carefully approaching this and talking about the types of zoning approaches that can be taken, because there are different types and hybrids and all kinds of mixes. So we talked with the council about that. Then we moved into contracts for visioning and zoning and moved through that process of preparing plans, adopting them, and all of the public process that takes. At that, when council discussed, I guess, the Imagine College Hill project in January of 2020, staff presented this slide that showed the potential area that the council discussed should the planning work focus on this area. And we talked about at that time and showed how that compared to the downtown area, how it connected, and that then how we would slowly try to connect the pieces of the community as we talk about the community as a whole. And so then also at that meeting in January of 2020, before we even kicked off the College Hill plan work with the consultant, we asked the council to think about what their priorities were. And this was adopted as the council priorities. And sorry, it cuts off at the end. There is a number 7 there that is that highlights. It says establish clear and objective zoning standards to achieve the adopted community vision. So I'm sorry, I did not see that would cut off on this slide. So that is, I think, that is kind of the, oh, sorry, one more slide then. It cuts off at the bottom of this one as well. But this, I tried to just give a synopsis listing. In some cases, it is not word for word, but this is from the executive summary of the College Hill Vision Plan. Some of the recommendations, it does list all of them. So if you go to pages 2 through 4 of the plan, you will see these. And then what cuts off is there's also near the back of the document toward the end. Sorry, I'll get the pages for you here. Oh, There's a big ideas section, which I think the mayor mentioned to the council in prepping for this on pages 30 and 31. That also talks about actions the council could take in trying to achieve some of the vision in this plan.
Thank you. So I think, for me, my goal with the work session especially is, no, we can't figure out all the details in this meeting. We've only got an hour. So I want to spend about 35 minutes just kind of going through and ask everybody to review which specific items, big ideas, the goals, and just wanted to see if, one, with the goals that were put in place when this was created, are those still kind of the goals that we're prompting and that we're looking to do with College Hill? But then are there some of the specific recommendations, for today, trying to keep it somewhat high level, but I'd like to walk away just with enough direction to be able to start working with staff to bring back to you guys an actual recommended, if we approve going forward, here's specifically things we will move forward with, and then maybe even here's some specific things we will not move forward with. So just kind of want to first open it up. I know I asked everybody to kind of review the plan, just for some of the particular issues you had. And I know I mentioned, I know two of the big ones we talked about are parking and zoning are two big things to kind of work through in there. So just first want to open it up and give us time to kind of talk through, first from all the history, there's been a lot of past conversations. Let's just kind of go through some of the high level ones, whether some are concerns, things you're really supportive of.
I'd love to hear from Aaron first because he talked to a lot of people about this.
Well, I don't have any concerns about it. I mean, my thought on it is that it starts with the end of the cutoff slide, which is the zoning, and zoning is intertwined with parking. Because to me, when you look at the recommendations, it's looking at what changes could we adopt that would then help with the other goals that are stated, how the zoning would affect walkability, exploring other public spaces, like between what I call the old Newman Center. I'm not sure what the building is now, but in Sub City there, I think was a great idea in the vision plan. And so these are all, as the mayor said, big ideas, and we need to start looking at the details. So I don't have any issues with it. I'm familiar with the debate about the scope. I will emphasize that the vision plan says those were study areas, okay, not necessarily zoning designations within the vision plan. I think it's important that we get moving on it, that we discuss and see if there are any issues about adopting the plan, and then looking into zoning. I know that in the CIP, we have $100,000 set aside to move forward with, by the way, just a consultant at this time, to see what is possible. As Stephanie mentioned, there are many variations of zoning that can take place depending on what the desires are of the council. And so, in my opinion, those are kind of the two steps where I'm at right now as a residential plan. I don't know if I have more to add than that. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
I'll jump in here quick. The way I'd like to approach this is to have each of us pick out 2 or 3 specific items, list those items and see where we overlap, and then take those and run with it, because that's the consensus that we have. To say that we want to readapt this is not the direction I would go, because of the scope of it, for one thing. I look at some of these, like fostering a healthy residential neighborhood. That's great. Have a healthy balance of both owners and renters. Well, right next to the campus, you should have a healthy balance of students. 80-90% population of students. It's the way it's evolved over the last 100 and some years of the university, and then go on out to a mix into the neighborhoods. The parking per bedroom issue, unless our College Hill has a Walmart type of store, a hardware store, a grocery store, people are going to have cars to travel to go get those goods and services. The Hill, and even our own downtown, doesn't have an all-encompassing environment to really live down there without a car. So you have that situation to deal with. So those are things that I look at, but I think if we each pick out a couple items, 3 items, and say, okay, let's look at those, see how we overlap, and then move forward with that. There's plenty of things here to pick from.
Well, Daryl and I know we disagree. I would say, I think for me, the issue with that is that it is a complete plan. So if you go in and you say, for example, talking about, shrinking down the area. So for me, I live on the corner of 12th and College. So certainly I don't feel like I live on College Hill, but I can walk directly to
Mhm.
College Hill. And so, I think something that this plan lends itself to is like making sure there is trees and that there is good lighting and that there are safe distances from the corners and, checking on speeds and all that kind of stuff,
Sure.
for cars. So I think if you start to shrink it down and say, well, let's just look at, do we need a parking ramp on the hill? That's not heading in the direction of a full revitalization of the area. So for me, I see this document as a tool and not as a strict, we're doing this, we're not doing that. And I think as we move along in making these decisions, we can use this more as a guide and, to help us really concentrate on what it looks like to, again, revitalize the area as a whole, not just these parts that we know we have issues with. It's kind of my take.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I brought up on my, sides here right away was, I don't really have anything to say. I just want to hear Aaron talk some more. Just kidding. But to both your points, we're neighbors. I live on 12th and Tremont, and what Diane and I talk about is we're like right between walking to Main Street or walking to College Hill. And in the summertime, that's what we do. It's like, well, you want to walk downtown or you want to walk up to the hill? Talking to my neighbors and such, when we were discussing approving this, I was kind of torn because I flip-flopped on my vote with it because I was kind of looking at with Daryl and Dave and some others. Well, let's approve it and then refine it. Well, by the time my vote got counted, I approved it and it didn't get approved. So that's where I was looking at the scope of it from that. But to your point, there's influence all the way around. Does it go, it's almost reaching to Kelly's house by the time we look at the end of where this all goes. So maybe one of the first things we need to do is agree that it may have this large encompassing geographical area, but for the workings of this, what can we do to that core area? What we probably, if any of us ask someone, hey, where's College Hill? They're not gonna say it's on 12th and Fremont or on 12th and College, right? They're gonna say it's on College Hill and you can't miss it. So,
And I completely agree, with all due respect. So I lived in Cedar Falls my whole life, and I guess when I think of the hill, respectfully, I don't think of 12th Street. I really don't. And so it's not a matter of whether or not the map and the feel of small town Cedar Falls, that lives. That's a real thing. But I think to shrink the focus down to where we probably can all find some actionable items, I don't know that it's in the large area to start. Not to say we can't start in the middle and work our way out, great, but I think we need to start in the hill and work our way out.
And I don't disagree with that. So, but the way I'm thinking about this is that, so you have the plan that takes into account, you should take into account the abutting areas, especially when you're talking about subdivisions. You have to, we have to, and so that map that was put up for the larger area, we should, as a council, I think, take into account the effect of the city as a whole I would envision, at least especially looking at the past council discussions, that if we can move forward on what specific zoning change, we're not talking about parking by Gil's house, right? I mean, when we're
Hope not.
talking. You know, but I think we can focus, again, I believe it starts with the zoning discussion and how that relates to parking. In, what was identified as study areas 1, 2, and 3 of unique character, which I think we can all agree is what we classically call the hill area. But again, that's starting with work. Right now, we have a plan that we haven't started work on. So, I think that to the extent that there are disagreements, and I take Daryl's point, those would happen when we start the actual work on what zoning looks like, not whether or not we adopt a plan.
I think one of my hangups is where we were the last couple of years. This was approved. We didn't do any work on it predominantly because the council couldn't agree on a direction to give staff. But I interpreted that as some of us in the majority at that time don't want wholesale form-based code like we did downtown to roll up to the hill. And the document clearly states that in a couple of places that that's the intention, is to model it off of downtown. I happen to know that that was the emphasis, like Stephanie already pointed out, some of those projects that we needed to go and pull the brakes a little bit. That was the impetus for both of these visioning plans. I personally don't have any major attack against form-based code other than I'd like to stick with the award-winning, tried and true Euclidean code through which we won a ton of awards for our downtown before we changed into this code that says you may do these types of uses within some restrictions, but it's not telling property owners what they can or can't do. It's saying it has to look this way. It has to have X amount of windows and floors, et cetera. So I just had a little bit of hesitancy around that. But we didn't do anything with it over the last 2 years, though it was adopted. Had we focused on some of those areas and said, hey, let's look at the hill itself, that wouldn't have impacted those in the residential areas, and we didn't. Where I'd have a little bit of concern now is the consistency that we're trying to get. I asked some questions at a previous meeting about housing for rental deconversion, right? If we're gonna try and get a healthy mix there, I don't know that we want to get the cart before the horse and say it's by moving in owners. I don't know why there's a stigma around renters for some people, but it seems to present that the way I read this plan.
And if I may.
Sure.
Form-based zoning is a loaded phrase, okay, and it means many different things, I think. We have basically Euclidean and then form-based zoning, but there's a lot of differences within each of those areas. And so I think the idea is we don't know what type of zoning we're looking at to approve or disapprove until at least we take the step to engage a consultant to show us what the options are. Then we can have those discussions about the concerns that you raised. But right now, it seems to me we're kind of fighting windmills that we don't know where there might be problems. We're just assuming that there may be because of a phrase like form-based zoning or something like that. So.
Yeah, I do respect there. I hear what you're saying, but we do have more than just windmills. They've got some actual flesh on them because of the battles that we had around amending the downtown code. It's constant 4-3s back and forth with vetoes galore. When, there were some things there that we said, hey, why don't we just do this and then we can move on? I thought we came to that point and then we didn't. So I think that that's why it stalled out over the last 2 years, because the council then said, yes, we value the citizens, we value the input, we want to do something on the hill. We just don't think we want it to be an overhaul, fire sale of the code and turn it into something new. So if this council said, let's keep traditional code and tweak it as we need to for parking and beautification efforts and that kind of thing, I'd be all for it. In fact, while we were talking about overriding the adoption, my question to council members was, what from this do you want to see happen? And it focused on beautification efforts and enforcement and helping development. You can do those in the existing code. We didn't do anything for 2 years.
I think we are doing,
There are projects.
They did Pedersen's, Plaza, we're getting
no, but I'm saying about over the whole city. And I don't know if Brian, you take care of that, or the tree planting program. Looking at who's all in the room here. The traffic speed concerns are all over town. Whether we do rumble strips or those flashing pedestrian beacons or whatever we do, roundabouts, the sidewalk situation. So those are a given thing for the whole city, that your concerns that you brought up. That's not just in the purple area. It should be everywhere. Now, if we really want to get in there and say the purple area is the College Hill visioning, we're leaving out the part of the student environment to the left, west of Hudson Road. There's a ton of student population out to the west, and that's not included. They're all walkable. People from, students from Point West walk over to the campus. Gold Falls, I lived in Gold Falls for 2 years, walked to campus. Hillcrest is more of a walk, but those are the hardy people out there. Their temperature is pretty low by the time they get to campus there lately. And so on. So if you want to debate the focus being the purple, well, that's wrong. It's either too big or it's not covering enough. If you really want to say, are we dealing with the student environment, because the College Hill gets its name from the campus being there. And the reason the students are in town, I said this during council meetings, the reason the kids come to town, young adults come to town, is to get an education at the university. So therefore, the social life in the evening becomes the College Hill or the downtown. So I think the purple area is too small, or what's it called here? Character Area 3 University Neighborhood. Why isn't west of Hudson Road considered the university neighborhood? It probably has a third of the student population over there.
I think that, we, like, this is, part of it is that we have to look at what is the greater goal beyond just College Hill. Like, eventually, we want to look at all of Cedar Falls, but we have to have a way to break it down into like reasonable chunks.
Yeah.
And then hopefully at some point in time, we'll get to a point where we can just say like, oh, well, this area is very similar to, what we did over here. Let's make sure we apply those same principles to this area. And so to me, that's why I think it doesn't go beyond that. It's just because you start to get into these like much too large areas to really like work on things. And, obviously, like, in some ways that is like, you are neglecting certain areas for a period of time. But I think, if we said, okay, like, we really want to make sure we're including areas like Gold Falls or, Hudson or whatever, I think that that's something that we can then talk to staff about. If we think that's really a huge part of College Hill, then we can do that. But I think that it's just like, holding up progress because of this map just seems like so.
Well, you got the character areas that are defined here, 9 different character areas. And the university neighborhood is very inaccurate in my mind and Gil's mind and others, that if you're going to focus incentives for construction, zoning, parking, or lack thereof, you have to look at what do it's inaccurate. And that's.
Are we doing that?
We haven't even got to that part yet.
That's where we're headed.
Daryl, with all due respect, and obviously it's well known that you and I disagree. You're not a planner. You're not, what I'm looking for, I know you're a financial planner, but you're not a planner
A
of the
business
city.
analyst for a
Okay,
lot of
that's all
things in a
things.
lot of areas, so.
And I respect that.
Okay.
But you are not the planner that these folks that we hired as a city to help us create a vision. I'm not trying to disrespect you at all. But in my mind, just, the normal nursey mind, I need some guidance of how we get to where we want to be. And all those things you're saying, we haven't even got there yet. So I guess the vision, I feel like I'm repeating what everybody's just said. It is just that. It's just a vision of what could be. And I guess I'll say it again, but I think it was the very end. There was a couple things the mayor asked us to pay special attention to. And as I read through them, I just thought it was such a good thing to remember. What was that in you said
Page
2 things.
30, 31.
There was the big ideas section.
Yes, okay, sorry, I was just there.
Yeah, 30 and 31.
I'm just gonna read through those. I don't mean to, but one of them was stabilize and enhance neighborhoods. That sounds great. And I wanna say that if I ever come off like I'm anti-landlord, that is not, I am not anti-landlord. I am all for all the different kinds of housing, and I've lived in some places as a tenant and had really great landlords, so I'm grateful for landlords. But I do understand what stabilizing the neighborhood means. And as many of those beautiful old houses that you surely can't build anymore, or at least build for what most people can afford. That's what I take that as, is stabilize the neighborhood and keep it what we got now. To concentrate and intensify student housing near campus. I think that's what you just said, Daryl.
That's exactly what I
Okay.
said.
So there's one. Reconnect the upper and lower hill. I would love, if anyone ever wants to go, even if you just want to take a walk, I would gladly walk around College Hill with you, because if you spend any kind of time up there, there is a big disconnect. And that's not new. I mean, that's back in when there were 16,000 students, you probably didn't realize it as much, but there is a disconnect. And from what I think our current zoning and code is holding up some progress there. Treat natural and areas as amenities. Well, there's a perfect example, Pedersen Plaza. And I think when they did the presentation, they talked about the Dry Run Creek, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it Hidden Valley, like how we could maybe make that where people have cut through for decades, but actually make it a beautiful amenity to College Hill. Manage parking better. If I recall right, I mean, there is a huge parking structure up there that the university built. And I know there's lots of different things that were in that recommendation that maybe the city and the university could work better together to better use parking. But I guess, again, I would love to go up, if there is a parking problem, I don't want just like a picture, or I would love to go physically with anyone who thinks there's a parking problem, other than there's lots of, I know that there's parking problems maybe when you're trying to rush to class and you cut yourself like a 2-minute time frame.
Been there.
But for the most part, I can tell you, it's a lot different than it was in 96 when there maybe actually was a parking problem. So I would love to actually see the problem. I think the problem now is we've got a lot of concrete that sits empty. Improve walkability. I mean, that is a big thing that kind of, yes, I understand, Daryl, I can walk all over everything. And we've cut through yards and all the things, but I think safely walking places, and actually maybe an enjoyable walk. I think there's the difference between, walking down snow-covered grass. And I know we put some sidewalks in up there, but there's an enjoyable walk that actually makes you want to walk and maybe gives you some relief in your mental health. And then there's like trudging through stuff. And that was, I think, a big focus, at least the people I've talked to, that were very good workers. When we asked for help from citizens, that was a big stressor between walking and biking. They really want to see that up there. And I think that's a perfect example of why you have to look at the whole area, because we're trying to connect different areas of our community so that people can get around. And I understand some people don't walk and bike, but there are people that do. And there's a younger generation that, for different reasons, be it just they want to, be it for health, be it to save money because they don't want to spend money on a car payment and insurance. But anyway, and then the last one is increase retail and dining options. And my goodness, if that's not we talk about the concentration of certain kind of retailers up there. Again, I would be glad to go up there with you because there's not a diversity, even less than there was 30 years ago. And I don't know, the neighborhood in Cedar Falls deserve better than, we need to make it a place where people want to be is what I thought. So I love those. I love that little sheet. I'll shut up now.
So just from talking to staff, so one on the district piece and all the different character districts, I think staff, just from talking, like a lot of those, outside of 1, 2, and 3, kind of the core, everyone said we need to be working on this. Have said like, yes, there's things in there that we could do. And it was honestly pretty things I think most of the group I've heard agree with in terms of making sure the people that have lived there continue to see similar things in their area. But I think generally there's no issue with making sure we just focus on 1, 2, and 3 and moving some of those forward, because I do think, Daryl, we talked about the parking piece, and actually, Hannah, you were the one that mentioned, should we be looking at resident-only parking along some of the, I think it'd be District 3, so that it keeps the college students from abusing the free parking on the street for classes. So I see a lot of the solutions, the things that we've talked about in the plan. It seems like the issue though is there's so many things in the plan. And again, I'll use this as a segue to the receiving file versus adoption. It seems that worry is like, well, does adopting this mean we're giving the thumbs up to everything that is recommended in this? But it does in some areas, like talk more about the form-based options and how to do that. So I think we don't quite have to segue to next steps yet, but it seems like we're trying to work through that question of what does adopting this mean in terms of next steps, real concrete next steps, and what doesn't it mean? Because I do think there's pretty good, it seems like agreement that we want to focus on the core. Still acknowledging that there is influence of those surrounding neighborhoods and being aware that we might need to look at some things there, but that being a secondary priority. So I'm kind of looking at how do we then get enough of a sense around if we were to focus on that core, what does that look like, knowing, I don't think, just like the housing needs assessment, we don't want to wholesale adopt all 33 items. But let's really quick talk about, we talked about defining receiving file versus adoption. And I think that's where this ended at the end of the year is, okay, adopting it means one thing to a lot of us. Having talked with staff, to them, they do say receiving file really does mean, not literally, but put this on a shelf. Like we're saying we accepted it, but we don't have a next step.
That's totally incorrect, and staff should forget that idea.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's generally when that's the thing, that's
It's
what
wrong,
the assumption
staff.
is. Well, I wouldn't say,
Because, huh?
I wouldn't say it's wrong. It's just how that's always been.
We, as a city, paid 80,000, 100,000, whatever we pay for a big fat document of lots of analytical things, and we receive it, okay? And it's up to staff and council and people to say, okay, what's this data tell you now? Okay, then at the end of it, they have the big ideas, or some of the other studies, they have 42 different action items, and you say adopt. Well, like when you adopt a child, this is yours. I take care of this thing, this person. And I was curious when I'm Googling the words adopt, and then the first thing that pops up is a child. You adopt the kid.
So I do think that's the important conversation though, is because I think
How
some
do you
of
look
us adopt means the same thing as what some of us receive and file means. So I think going forward, we just want to know, okay, if we adopt a plan, and other than, I think we can technically write this down so that we know when we say, okay, receive and file for adoption, we know what we're doing. But I get the feeling that everyone says this is a good plan. There's a lot of good research put in. We just want to know what are the actual tactical next steps that we're taking, the concrete things we're doing. So what would you guys like to see as and my feeling is, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to paraphrase, is there's pieces about this that we really do think have validity and we like, there's pieces we have concerns with. We think though, for the 4 areas of 1, 2, and 3, we want to focus on that. And we want to see if we were to say move forward with 1, 2, and 3, what are the next steps that we would actually take on a technical level, whether that's bringing in a consultant to review the zoning, whether that's reviewing parking policy. What are you guys feeling for? What are you looking for that next step from myself and from staff?
Well, if I may speak again, the boundaries of 1, 2, and 3. There's areas next to campus on the southern side of campus, in particular during the engineering build out, that are not included in what they're calling University Neighborhood, or Starbuck Circle, I think is what they call that area, to the south. And then again, I said on the west side of University, but the immediately adjacent areas next to campus should be what's all included in number 3. Because we have number 4, which they're calling Searly Park and Clay Street neighborhoods, certainly is not Starbuck Circle or south of University. That's not Searly Park or Clay Street. That's the University neighborhood, General College Hill. I had page 29 on the presentation, if that can be pulled up.
don't have, what do you mean, page 29 on the presentation, I only have like 5 slides.
This, you don't have the full.
Oh,
Okay,
is that the actual school?
it's called character areas. This is the visioning study that I printed out a long time ago.
I think it's page 36 and.
In the packet?
Okay,
41, it's 41 in the packet.
there's actually several places where they show it again.
34.
Yeah. And this is an item that I'd say this group can talk through on consensus wise. And just to clarify though, for this meeting, we're not taking any action, we're not making any referrals, it's just discussion. Does anybody else share feelings about the actual designations of the district, just thoughts and concerns on how these have been mapped out, or?
I mean, to me, I mean, again, the nature of the boundaries of the districts, would be a focus on whatever proposed zoning changes, or ideas that we would get from the consultant that we have $100,000 set aside to have take a look at for us, and presumably give us more than one option. And if that means redefining those districts to better fit with that zoning plan, then that's something I think would come before the council and we take a look at. So I don't think that these boundaries, again, there was a study of, these are specific districts that have shared characteristics in the eyes of the consultants, and they mapped them out for us, so we had a sense of that. It's not a plan for zoning boundaries.
It's a starting point.
I think there's
Everything's a starting point.
Yeah. To your question about language and to what Daryl's saying with, receive and file and putting it, their interpretation of putting it on a shelf. Well, that's.
Those were my words.
Right, so that's where, Daryl's getting a baby and he's adopting it. To some people's, so some people's, determination of adopting is, if you do adopt a child, you got everything that goes with it, right? So how do we then, if we adopt it, it's everything. And I think that's where the past has been, with the previous councils and thought was, well, there's stuff here that we don't want. And if we say adopt, and the interpretation of Ron or maybe Brian or Chase is, well, no, we're gonna pull that out, or we're gonna pull this out. Well, why didn't you pull that out of receive and file, right? So how do we get to one language and one understanding, then we can move forward.
There's only one file I know of that says stuff is dead, and that's file 13. So if we keep it on file to reference, then it's the garbage can.
Oh.
So, I mean, yeah, so if we receive and file, we use that for reference. We do that with every document in the city except for one in the last year. But we have that on record so that we can reference it and say, hey, let's pull this from that work that was paid for and done. The adopt and approve is exactly like you're saying. You take on all of it and say, yes, I'm good with all of that. And I reference a couple lines in here that basically say, hey, it's the intention of this plan to build on what we did downtown. And again, we stalled out on downtown. On one sticking point for me is I don't like the, I believe it's the Administrative Oversight Committee. I want plans and changes to come before P&Z and the council. That was one thing that we couldn't get undone, though we were in the majority on it. It was vetoed by a supermajority requirement at planning and zoning. I reference all of that because it's part and parcel to me being able to say, I adopt and approve this plan in total. I don't, because we can't change those things about our current downtown code before moving this to the Hill. I think if I were to speculate, we probably have a couple perspectives. Some perspectives would be, let's adopt the whole vision plan because it's innocuous. It's just a vision. And some that say, no, let's pick 5 things that we want to actually have done. I would dare say that we all agree on the heart behind this vision document, but it's more than just a vision of aspirational ideas. It is a vision plan, which is defined as steps to take in order to accomplish it. The first step to take in order to accomplish this is do downtown code revisions in this entire district, which I'm not prepared to do. That's my big hang up on it. So we either need to be able to say, let's strike certain lines from this plan, or leave it filed, reference it, and bring forward ideas to put as resolution efforts. Because we can bring forward ideas to say, let's fix 1, 2, and 3. I think we even had consensus about that last year, focusing on 1, 2, and 3 in the limited scope, and maybe even doing form-based code in that College Hill district, but not the entire breadth of it. Do it all form-based code. That's what adoption of this plan today says to me is the intention.
And that's what it
It's
says
just
to me.
more than a vision.
If we're gonna adopt it, it's the whole baby.
May I, because I just love a good metaphor. You and I, that's need to sit down. I wanted to hear more about the specifics about your concerns about where downtown is at right now. And from my perspective, not being in the weeds like you were, I see it as sort of a grand success. Not being in the weeds as you were. The second thing though is think about adoption this way, and I don't want to spend the night on wordplay, okay? But the way I look at it is you adopt a child, since we're on the adopting a child thing. So you take all that responsibility. You then have to make the decision about what's for dinner that night. You have to make the specific decisions about any plans for college. You have to make the specific decision down the road about whether or not you're going to buy a car. Situations may change. You're unable to buy a car for that child down the road. So to me, adoption means this is the grand scheme. We know the general concept, we're going to raise a child. But the nuts and bolts of what raising that child is going to be are the specifics, like what zoning changes that we would vote on down the road. Okay, so to me, adoption just means this is a great concept. We think we should move forward on it. And then where the specifics are, we'll have those issues brought before us. And I think we have to begin with that consultation.
Because again, if I can speak from my side, either way, and how those are defined, I'm looking at it as, I see it as my role to hear your guys' concerns, general thoughts, and hopefully work with staff to, at the next meeting, whenever it is, bring back here's a recommended set of actions we would like to start moving forward with. And knowing there are things we would like to not prioritize, here are some things that we won't work on right now. So personally, for me, I'm comfortable with however we want to define that, because I think the end goal is having understanding of everyone's general thoughts and concerns on the priority to make an impact on College Hill and get that area redeveloped. And then just starting to work through the process of bringing you guys those recommendations and the steps we think will get us there. So I'm comfortable either way. I just think it comes down to just making sure we have a shared understanding. And because while I'm sure future things come up that we want to see in file versus adopt, just making sure we're on the same page with that.
This is my take, and so if I was sitting in staff's shoes, and no matter what side of the issue I was sitting in on, time is money, right? Like we all only have so much energy to give and the jobs that we need to do. So if I was sitting on a receive and file, I would kind of take that, and again, I'm all for defining it, but I would take that as, you know what, that's not really where the focus is. There's not a lot of energy for support there. I guess what I'm thinking is, I don't want, no matter what side of the issue I was on, I don't want energy given to something only to be shot down and torn apart and nothing done with it. On where the other one is it sounds like, hey, the receive and adopt is, yeah, we can get down with this. We may not want to put everything in on it, but it is good for us and staff and the whole team to focus on what this document or vision or whatever says. I guess wasting energy and going nowhere doesn't seem like a good use of energy. So when you say file.
Yeah, because if I can clarify something,
Yeah.
I just remember talking to staff on this, because I got the list of all the other things that we receive and file, and they're typically things that aren't future action oriented. It's literally just, we're receiving and filing a thing because we have a legal requirement to show us. So I think that's where staff's coming from, is receive and file is typically meant, this is just a thing we literally need to receive and file. Not there's a future action that's being prompted from this. So I think that's where their definitions have come from, was receive and file is saying we literally received this. There's no expected future action. Adoption meant we're recognizing this document as an informative piece of future effort. Again, they're words, however we define them, doesn't necessarily dictate what the action is. It's how we actually move forward.
I like those words. Because we do receive and file a lot of things. It's mainly to probably have it on hand if we ever need it. If we ever need to remove it from the file. I hold on to lots of things in my files that I probably will never touch again, but I keep it because the tax man may come.
That's That's what you use to do your taxes, and to run a business and so on. But the second part of the adopt in the Oxford language is to choose to take up, follow, and use. So that's where you're adopting all these recommendations to use them. Well, we don't agree on using them all. That's where my point of grabbing 2 or 3 things or 5 things, whatever number we want to start with. I think 3 is easy to grab onto. As far as big ideas, making biking easier, the bike committee, delegate to them. And maybe in combination with public safety, as far as bike crossings and what have you in the city. And I'm assuming you work with the Ped committee, right? Yeah, all the time. Yeah. So, I mean, some of these things are delegated out. Walkability, filling gaps in the sidewalk, Brian, that's his fun job, filling in the gaps, right? Infills. So,
But you're giving direction out of something that you don't want them to have.
I have it filed there.
You're saying, don't use this document. We don't like
no, I'm
it.
saying this is already being done all the time throughout the city. Planting trees, we
We're
have,
aware of that.
Right, but
We're aware of that. We want to get to the best place. I guess that's the thing where first of all, I would love it if we could. It's not saying we're doing the whole thing. It's just giving guidance of how to maybe get there. So,
that's why we received and filed it. And now we pick out 2, 3 things.
okay.
gotta be
Again,
there.
we are just coming down definitions of
Yeah.
work. So just to kind of step in and say, we really just need to have a written agreement on, because I do think under what staff has previously in previous councils, I think their assumption was receive and file just as a tool you use to just file things that come in. Adoption meant, I think what you're saying, and I'm saying that's how we need to go forward, but that's how it's been historically, is adopt meant this thing has some value after as a reference item. I will fully admit though, I think especially in the last 4 years or so, that a lot of the communication wasn't happening with you guys after something was adopted. That then there was that next step of, okay, now here are things we're moving forward with, and that clear communication. And that's something I commit to with my role, is making sure that communication is there. Because I do think, to me, I would take it right now, if you guys adopted this, I would take that as, I know you have concerns with certain aspects, and I'm only gonna try to bring forward the pieces that I think we have agreement on and work through the other ones. So that to me is how I've always viewed the adoption piece, is that becomes now my job and working with staff to make sure we're crafting something to bring back that moves forward the pieces we agree on.
I guess I'd be curious, why did it stall out? I know Ron and I have talked about this. I'm not asking particularly for his perspective on it, but it was approved since May of 2020, right? Why was nothing done with the approved College Hill Vision Plan over the last 2 years from other people's perspectives? Not yours yet.
Just very candidly, the council at the time explicitly gave staff the direction that nothing is to be done until we tell you to move on.
But I'm asking for the why from council members.
We took funding away. I never felt like there was a want for anyone besides possibly a couple of us, maybe 2 to 3 of us, to move forward. I didn't hear that or feel that
Well,
it was ever wanted to move forward. And I think that was proven like with an exclamation point when I never had the vibe that we wanted to move forward. So if I mistook that, I apologize.
Yeah, because was that a voted on item, like when it was said not move forward with it? Was that a council?
No,
So
it was a
just kind of like
consensus from a
consensus.
committee.
I think our interpretation of it was that the funding came out of the CIP, and then the directive was finish up the code with downtown. And then it was problem after problem with downtown. And so then College Hill never happened.
When you say our perspective, you're saying from P and Z, or are you saying from your time
College
College
Hill.
partnership?
Partnership.
Thank you.
You have a lot of we hats.
Sorry.
Just wanted to make sure I was sure what perspective you were referencing.
Danny, needless to say, there's a different style of mayoral effort here than previous 2.
Yeah.
That I dealt with. So, yeah, there'll be a different path of everything, many things, anyway. So one thing I did want to ask, I know, Aaron, you bring up hiring a consultant. nowhere in this document does it say we gotta hire another consultant to do more work with some of this.
That's a concern I have too, that we're gonna have to have the discussion, a discussion on conversation with, we've already got, what are we looking at adopting if it's, doesn't give us some sort of a roadmap
I'm
to the
referring,
next steps?
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the CIP line for looking at zoning,
Oh,
$100,000 that I believe was earmarked for
Mhm.
consultation.
I don't want to pay up. We talked about it at some length in one of the committee meetings perhaps, but Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong here. We had asked if we don't hire a consultant, can we revise code internally within the Euclidean code? It was asked. And we said, yeah, we have 25 grand allotted for code changes. And Kevin said, yeah, I think we could take a swing at some changes internally without having a consultancy fee. And not at all pointing fingers, but again, we did nothing because there was, in my estimation, a sense that the only way forward was redoing the code in form-based fashion for the entire district. And that was a non-starter for 4 of the previous council. And that's why the other 3 never brought forward another item, even though it was adopted. Well, obviously I've heard tonight that the sentiment was it's a non-starter for anything in the document. I don't think that was expressed. I apologize if that's how it was received. The College Hill area needs attention. The people there put in the vast majority of the effort for this plan. A couple of the sticking points in Danny's first question about what pieces did you have issue with in the pages 8 or 9. It wasn't as broad a swath of our city as we'd like to think. There were 33 respondents to one of the surveys and 13 to another. Let's say that there were 300 people involved in this visioning plan. You heard it from them in some of the committee meetings in May of 2020 that, hey, if they weren't here and they didn't like it, too bad, they can get in on the next one. Well, this is changing code that's been in place for decades and decades. So there is no next one. And that was the reason we hang up downtown, because we're making drastic sweeping changes. And the sentiment was, well, let's just let it ride and play out and see how it works. You know, that's my main hesitancy, is more about the how we go about this than the content of the plan itself. The intent of the plan, I think we all agree that we want to do something helpful to reinvigorate that area. And I just think that how we go about it is critically important. So I think I could agree with Daryl's sentiment that we may have some new direction that gives us a little different take this year than last. So with that, I wonder if we're ready for some next step ideation.
My thought on what the mayor said was, you know, regardless of the communication gaps or perceived, real or otherwise, if from the staff's perspective, in order to get some movement, whatever that form may take, then we need to receive, file, and adopt. Then let's do that, so that it's clear that there's, to your point earlier, Dustin, that we're using it as a reference, right? To see what actions can be taken. Use that, again, with the consultation with staff as far as those zoning changes, well, whether we could do it internally or need to hire a consultant again, that would come before the council, I think. But at least with the adopt, then we can agree to some movement. The next step is to what's the next move? It's not gonna be a wholesale form-based zoning for the area in purple on the map, right? So.
At least not with this consultancy either, could they disband it?
Right, we'd have to find somebody new. So.
I would say from my standpoint, of, you know, we've got about maybe 10 minutes to look at this for next steps, is because if we were to look to bring it back to adoption, I would never even want to do that without committing to bring back a list of here concrete actionable things that's what we consider that is here are the next steps. Adopting this means these actions will be taken. These particular actions right now won't be taken, or we know we need additional conversation on. I think, and again, since we don't really have time today, get into the weeds, it could be something that just by email, everyone, like all the specific things that, you know, you mentioned, whether your top 3 things you really like. But I think bigger for me is just what are your concerns or areas you think should be fleshed out from this. Maybe you can just email that with me so I can start working that through with staff and getting a sense of what are the pieces it seems like we all agree on that we can just get moving with, and that can be on our list of things we're gonna get going on right away. And then I can get a sense of what are the things that there's maybe concern about, or we need more time to work on. That wouldn't be on that immediate list then.
Well, if I may interject, I do a lot of that here, it seems. To Aaron's point, you know, we want to adopt it. I guess I push back again on that because sitting on council now for a while, sitting in the cheap seats in the front of council, being on the College Partnership for 3 years myself, going to UNI in the 80s and so on, living in multiple places there, from Gold Falls to the dorms to everything. We sit there on council and all of a sudden staff brings up a topic on the agenda. And then we kind of look at each other and where's that come from? Well, this was approved 5 years ago by council, adopted. And then it sits there and then all of a sudden, well, it's got to come forward. That doesn't seem a prudent way to manage a city, to have stuff adopted. I mean, I'm pushing back against a full adoption of this because I go back again to my 2-3 items and work with it. Because we received it, we paid for the consultant, they gave us a lot of information. And we filed it to use in your file cabinet, pull out things, all these different components, and then you work on them. You know, like somebody had said earlier, a lot of this stuff hasn't been done. Well, the rental to single family owner conversion program has been ongoing through this whole thing. That's one of the bullet items on stabilizing neighborhood. Continue the rental permit program. That's been ongoing for decades in Cedar Falls. Almost all the bike easier ideas are being handled. Much of this, possibly a fourth of it, you could say, is an ongoing effort in the city. So it's in motion and being used. Active.
I think the imperative next step here is that we need to have a consensus amongst this group and a working definition of what does receive and file mean and what does adoption mean? Because until we have that definition that we all agree to, I don't see this going anywhere. I think there's beliefs across the table that aren't going to align as to whether we do think we can take portions of this. We have to wholesale take it all, whatever that means. And until we can agree amongst this body that that's what it means, I don't think you're going to get any progress forward. I really don't. And I think that's the first step.
The one thing I did think of is if that was how we use receive and file meant use this as a reference, then you really have no point for the term adoption to exist.
Yeah.
Because at that point, receive and file means use this, like then what does adopting mean? Other than you're saying wholesale adopt everything in this plan, but I don't think
Take
that's,
up, file, or use.
but that is kind of what we're saying with the receive and file is please take up, file or use, take up.
So, and
But then you bring an
item, but
item,
you're referring, Daryl, to the second definition in the Oxford Dictionary for adopt, take up, file, and use, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so adopt means take up, file, and use.
Yeah.
Okay, here's, can I make one more point to Chris's point? Just,
Okay.
bear with me, Daryl. My opinion is adopt simply means do the vision plan. We'll work out the details later. Don't forget, because this council, I think, has considered it important once before, especially when we're in goal setting and talking about the money to get to UNI for the dome, okay? There are two important reasons for that. One, because of the benefit of the city from the uses of the dome, but also the symbolic commitment of the city and the partnership with the University of Northern Iowa. The same is true with the receive and file and adopt the vision plan. We can bicker about what it means, but it also shows that continued and maybe renewed support and connection with the University of Northern Iowa, whose president came down and spoke at the council meeting when it was decided to not adopt or to reverse that prior decision that had been sitting there for 2 years. So don't discount that, what I would call a soft but important benefit to adopting.
I'll say.
So again, tonight, we're not taking any action. It does seem like, just to recap quick about these next 5 minutes for the next step. So there's a lease agreement that we want to move forward with pieces in this plan. And that regardless of what the receive and file adopt means of, I would like to come back to the group with. First, I'll kind of follow up with that email requesting everyone to look at everything ahead of time and just see if you could just send me your written thoughts on things you have concerns with, things you'd like looked at more, or things that you really strongly support and want to move forward with.
I'm sure the mayor means by that individual.
Yeah, yes. Please send me individual emails and do not reply all. There's a lot of memes of do not.
Emails don't walk, Kevin, it's fine.
And I don't
It's
get
not
a
a
sense
bad
we're
idea.
quite at consensus yet on just the definitions of those terms. Again, not because I think they're a controversial thing, it's just we're defining words differently, and words matter, but also the definition is whatever we decide it is.
Part of that problem is, well, since you love analogies, you take a cookbook off the shelf to bake a cake. You don't turn to the recipe for fruit cake if you're trying to make a yellow cake with vanilla frosting, right? But if somebody comes to your kitchen and starts baking a fruit cake when you wanted a yellow cake with frosting, you're gonna be pissed off at your results for your birthday party. So you'd be better off to remove the fruitcake recipe from the cookbook before you put it into the adopted category. We don't have that option with this document. If I said, there's 10 items here, I love 7 of them, 3 of them I never want to see. Can't do
Okay,
that
I
if you
think I
adopt
get
the
to
whole
see.
plan.
Took me a while to get.
Yeah.
He goes by having that dinner.
Make it here and sell it. I'm insinuating that no one likes fruitcake as well, so.
One thing I could like throw out there as an option is, if we have a plan like this done, that to me, then it should come with a tactical, like here are the specific, adopting it includes a next step plan. That says, here are the next steps of things we'll move forward with.
And
So-
and for that matter, what may not.
We adopt a budget that can change and we can amend the budget later. There are many things that always can be amended, when conditions change or, or warrant those amendments. To me, what we work on the vision plan afterwards follows the same steps. This can require further hard votes on specific decisions. Now, where a lot of this discussion, I guarantee you, is gonna happen again. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not even to the point of discussing what form does, to your point, the zoning might look like on the hill.
Yeah, and I think we were, and it fizzled out because of what this says it has to be.
So I would say.
That was my hang up. Yeah.
If there's a general consensus on it, I would like, cause I could see a process just hypothetically working out, a plan gets done, we receive and file it. And the next step is then for staff to come back with hey, we've reviewed the whole plan. Here are the next steps we think should be moved forward with on this, that we'd like to start moving on. With that then is when we vote to adopt with those next steps.
Those 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
the 4 things.
I guess that was gonna be my question to you, Danny, is what you see as what we get in here that we receive and file and what we get in here that we adopt. To Dustin's
So-
point, what,
That's what he wants us to email.
So
Yeah,
we receive and
Yeah.
file the whole document. Then at that point,
Or adopting portions thereof.
we provide an amendment that says, when you look at this, these are the things that are the priority.
And I don't know if it needs to
Action
be an
items.
amendment,
so we've already
technical
received and filed
thing,
it.
It'd be a resolution.
But it would just basically be part of the resolution.
That's my
saying we're
cookbook
adopting
analogy.
this With the assumptions that here are the actions.
If
that
the
are being-
cookbook is on the shelf, it's received and
What's the
filed,
next action
and we
item?
simply say, hey, so if the document is received and filed, and we say, hey, we want to bake that yellow cake with frosting. Let's by resolution, pull that section out and bring it forward for resolution. It doesn't have to be adopt the entire fucking cookbook. Just,
You realize you're
do the
doing
parts you
yellow
want.
cake, pretty
I
much,
don't
right?
even care.
You do realize.
Not even my
that-
favorite.
That this is all gonna end up in the Courier.
I love it. He's right. He's right there.
Did you get that?
Love it.
Yellow cake and field.
And you're
Yellow cake.
Really big here in the next issue. You're gonna get some emails from fruitcake lovers.
I bet I will.
Or some
Bet I
hate
will.
mail.
Or hate.
So I would say if this sounds like consensus, is I would like to come back and I can put on, I would like to look at then us approving, adopting that with here are the explicit next steps that means we will be taking, and probably a list of things we know aren't priorities that we're going to defer until we either have more conversation. And that we can kind of say like, these won't be acted upon unless we make an additional action to move forward with some of those things.
I give you a hand out.
A selective adoption.
Yep,
Throwback.
yep.
So we're not, actually, we do not vote. We
Oh.
do not.
No,
vote.
So you want,
We got any
so
cue?
you
Yeah, I was
want,
gonna say.
so Danny, you want 2 or 3 or 4 items sent to you individually on action steps you want that we feel passionate about.
Well, I would say concerns you have, because I think
Or
the
concerns.
concerns are the things that I can make sure those are no things I know
Addressed.
that need to be worked on.
Yeah.
If there are specific things that you're very supportive of, sure. But I think it's more the concerns so that we can know, okay, those are things we do not want to move forward with right now. Or if you do have something like you had mentioned, looking at the districts again, if you would like to maybe give some direction of Mike should looking at the districts. Not saying everything everyone wants will be in there, can't get everything, but at least then it gives me that ability to start working through what's an approvable version of those next steps look like.
Cool.
Okay.
So we agreed to disagree. We got something figured out.
Hey, we made progress.
Good
job, guys.
We made progress
Chris,
and
you
on the
used
20,
devised it
let's
really
see,
well
a
there.
week from
I did.
today
Thank you.
is, the
You're
baby
in
shower.
management, right?
Yeah, my baby shower.
Been charged
With
Daryl.
gold, yellow cake.
Yellow cake.
Yellow
I'll take
cake.
fruitcake
Oh,
though.
yeah, bro, bring Daryl fruitcake.
I always,
Mince pie for you.
oh, mince pie as well.
Hi.
Unique things.
Okay, so we are going to, we have the required people.
At our next, holiday event at his house or whatever event he has, I bring the pie.
I actually did hear this, that you did make a rather good pie.
Yeah, he brought pies, Kelly brought potato salad.
What is the great combination?
No, but, well, we're having burgers, so that's what's
Okay, all right.
With the potato salad, it was like bacon and onions on a cream base. It was the
Nice to
best
buy
potato
those.
salad I've ever, and it wasn't potato salad, it was like potato salad, almost better.
All right.
Anyway.
Noted, I'll be asking for that.
So if it's still cold temperatures, I'm gonna ask Kelly for potatoes. Anyway, I was actually talking about doing one at the end of the month, because it's the 5th. But he's at home, so I'm trying to think, okay, after the Super Bowl. And having be at my home, like to rotate, whomever is willing to.
Do we still have
Yeah.
all seven of us?
Because we don't all need to get done.
Okay.
Right.
So I don't need to call the order, I'm still in order.
Bring it back.
We're bringing it back to order.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Back to order.
You're
Dr.
eating
you wanna take it away?
All right. Well, something we can all agree on. Puppies, kittens.
Puppies, kittens.
Here for the
Perfect.
kids.
We've got about a dozen slides just to tell you about animal control and tell you about some changes that we're gonna make. I've kind of got the overview. Chief Howard can answer a lot of questions if you get into specifics about costs and what we're currently paying, exactly what things cost. And then Brian's gonna cover the piece that PW does, removing dead animals. But, you know, we've always done animal control. I've been here 33 years. There was a point where we did it ourselves, then it went on to Humane Society. Brian's folks did dead animals for years. Then eventually it went to the Humane Society for a contract for a long time. And that's kind of where we'll pick up. So, what happened was this fall, this fall, we had our contract with, actually, let me go back one. Sorry. We used to pay every year for the Humane Society to take care of our animal control. And then there came a point where Waterloo went on their own. They took care of housing animals and picking up animals back around 2013 or 14. We were still with the Humane Society. Then what Waterloo did was they approached Cedar Falls and said, hey, if you want, we can pick up the animals for you. We do a cheaper Humane Society. So in about between 2014 and 16, then we signed on with the city of Waterloo. So we housed the animals at the Humane Society and paid them, but Waterloo did our animal control and they did our dead animal pickup since about 2015. And you can see how the costs increase. They steadily increased there 2016, but between the two of them together was 96,000. 2021, we were at 122,000. Then all of a sudden this fall, we got contact in late September. Waterloo said that they were gonna raise our rate significantly and that they were gonna get out of the dead animal business. So if you do the math, they were proposing a 460% increase. And they were gonna stop picking up dead animals. So we consulted Kevin because we have a contract that says they can only raise it 3% a year. The contract also said anybody could get out within 90 days. So we replied back, we told them, we said, no, we're good. We'll just take the 3% increase. And then they told us, no, we're done. So the date that it ended was January 11th. So since since September, Chief Howard and Brian's staff and myself and several others, we've been working with local veterinarians, wildlife contractors, the Humane Society on animal control solutions. So just to give you an idea what we do for animal control, you know, you've all seen, you know, you take any community in Iowa or anywhere, somebody's the dog catcher, somebody's doing animal control. And Mark can tell you, it's probably done 10, 15, 20 different ways around Iowa. Some places the cities do it, some places the Animal Rescue League does it, some places a local contractor does it. Some places the county does it. So to give you an idea of the amount of calls we have about, 300 animal calls a year, about 150 are just dead animal pickups. And so some of the types of calls are what you think of, lost cat, lost dog, found cat, found dog, injured animals, whether it's domestic animal or wildlife, vicious animals, animals with rabies or distemper, parvo, dog bite cases, which unfortunately you guys are familiar with. You've done a few in the last couple of years. And we have, for dog bites, Mark might be able to tell you a number I couldn't, but we have a lot of cases where there's a dog bite. It's a single incident. They work at the Humane Society, the dog has all the shots and everybody's good. You guys only get exposure to the ones that go bad or where there's a real problem. The Humane Society does work with feral cats and animal trapping. And then we work with code enforcement and building inspectors on hoarder homes and homes that are discovered with dozens of animals, where you're dealing with cleaning up the home, recovering all those animals and things. And then there's the dead animal pickup, and Brian will cover that in the future with a couple slides. Then we also have wildlife calls, where you have, wild animals in buildings, window wells, fenced areas and things like that. One that I can think of that happens a lot is like you'll have a raccoon falls down the window well. And we tell the people, well, there's really nothing we can do about it. But if a 6 or 7-year-old girl, if that's her bedroom inside that window, you can't just leave it. So you work with them, try and figure out how to get it out of there, put a little ladder in for it, things like that. So there's a lot of, this is just giving you an idea of the calls we do, but there's so many unique calls with animals. Years ago, we worked on coyotes coming into town, messing with dogs in heat, on the west side of town. It just, through the years, there's just been a lot of things with animals, So some of the solutions we've been working on here that we've already started doing last week, Public Works has been picking up the dead animals, and Brian will cover that. Public safety staff, we can do emergency pickup on nights and weekends of dead animals. And probably the best example there would be, an animal that's killed right in front of a house, or a deer that's flung up on the sidewalk in a residential area, or things like that. So our staff can do our best in getting those animals out there, working with Public Works. Our officers transport animals out to Humane Society, which is something we did for years, a while ago. And you take the animal out there, you feed it, you fell a slip, and then the Humane Society takes care of it from there. It stays overnight. We also have crates at our public safety department. We've always had where in certain times we keep animals that are built until the next morning. We've been working with the Humane Society. They can do anything Monday through Friday during the week. So there's no concern there. They have staff there. They can help us with anything. They always have veterinarians on staff. We worked with our Humane Society and met with them. We're purchasing some more handling equipment. We're getting training on catch poles. We bought some bite gloves, kennels, and we have a 2023 SWAT van. That's really, it's just a white van that has seats in the back of it, has some extra gear in it. But now we mounted a kennel in the back of there that we can use for hauling animals too, if we need to, if we can't do it in a police car. And then some of the other solutions, Marcus talked to a couple different local veterinarians. If we had a situation where you had a vicious animal and the only choice was to end the life of that animal, and we couldn't destroy it using a gun or something, there's veterinarians we could get on scene to help with that. Those are very rare, but very unique, depending where the animal is and if it's hurt people and things like that.
That's a tough animal if you can't put it down with a gun.
Well, depending what it is. Yes. Yes.
In that 8-year-old window well, you don't.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Window wells, gotcha.
Now I'm tracking it.
And then, for wildlife, we'll refer people to private contractors to deal with wildlife. So, if you've got a bigger property in Cedar Falls, or you end up with a wild animal around your property that's causing problems, we're probably not gonna help them. We're gonna refer them to contractors that they can hire to do it, because it is just that, it's wildlife, and you live back on Grand Boulevard or someone's place along the river, you just get used to it. There's animals everywhere, but those animals get sick and things happen, so. And then, Mark is working with Kevin on some changes to city ordinances. And so that's where we're at right now. And I'll let Brian cover the dead animal pickup piece of it.
All right, Thank you, Bertie. You can just
I just feel it, okay.
go on through. Just a few highlights from our, removal policy that we put together. Few things, deceased animals, we'll take them from city streets, right of ways, and public property. They will not be taken from, I'm sorry, did I say public property? They will not be taken from private property. Our intent will be to clean them up off the streets, the right of ways, any city parks, things like that, but we will not collect dead animals from private properties. We put together a little spreadsheet, to keep track of that. Any call-ins, we'll record them. Administrative staff will take care of that, and just so we have a record of what we're collecting. If we get a domestic animal, a cat or a dog, we're gonna make every attempt to go through and scan them to see if the owner's available to claim the animal. I understand that public safety is purchasing a scanner, one that will actually read a name, and you also have, access to the database, from what I understand, so we will be able to take care of domestic animals in that manner and make it a more humane treatment of those. Collection times, Public Works is gonna work during regular hours, Monday through Friday, to collect the animals. If there's a deer or something that's maybe a traffic hazard in off hours, public safety or fire will take care of them, get them off, at least onto the right of way if they can't pick them up. And then they'll contact Public Works and we'll take care of them, our next business day. If it's, like I say, a true hazard, public safety will make the call and we may have to come in on overtime, or they may take care of it, something like that. But the intent is, if there's a safety factor, then they'll take care of them. You can skip to the next, one time like that. For disposal, small deceased animals will be bagged. We're gonna use a proactive approach on this. So supervisors, refuse collectors, myself will have sanitary bags in our vehicles. If we see an animal that's a roadkill, that's within means of us to manage ourselves, we'll grab it, we'll bag it, it'll go to the transfer station. If we have a large animal such as a deer, we're probably gonna make an appointment with our refuse staff. They'll use Tommy Gate equipment, or if they have to, a small end loader, or maybe just a rear load refuse truck. They'll bag it if they can. If it's a deer, they'll pick it up with that Tommy Gate or end loader, whatever's necessary to pick it up with. Those two will go through the transfer station and out to the sanitary landfill. What we did out there is, we had modified our policy a little bit, to accept animals such as this. The policy already existed for us to be able to take dead animals to the landfill. However, a few of the changes that we made were times that we take them out there. So if it's a large animal such as a deer or something like that, we've got to give prior notification, and they've got to be there by 11 a.m. I believe is the cutoff time. That way they know that they're going to get buried properly. So.
Ryan, can I ask you a question? First of all, what number do they call? Because I feel like I have always called animal control, but that's not who I'm gonna call anymore.
Everything will be through the dispatch center now.
Do I call non-emergency, or how do I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, second, now I understand not taking off of private property. A few years ago, when I first got elected, there was an incident of a cat found in an abandoned grill in an alley down here, a dead cat.
Right by Lincoln School.
Yes, okay, and I think I feel like staff ended up taking care of it because I didn't know what to do. Okay, but now I know. So if that happens again, they put it in a garbage bag and they can just put it in their garbage container.
Or if they don't want to sit in their container over the weekend or a long period of time, they can bring it to the transfer station.
They can bring it to the transfer, should they call ahead of time?
Will they get charged?
No, not necessarily
Okay.
that. If something's brought in the transfer and they're made aware of it there, larger animals
Sure.
such as a deer, then they can know what load it goes into, and then they can alert the landfill
Okay, bag it
that
up,
it's coming out.
take it to the transfer station and talk to staff.
Brian, is there a charge associated to the resident if they bring that into the
You know,
transfer station?
We can work on that. I don't know if that's something we can waive just as a,
Feels like it
or
should be.
the 75 cent
Yeah,
bag
feels
fee.
like
I don't know. That's
Hopefully
something,
I.
we really haven't talked about that.
One thing I would say, since that's a cat, we would probably want public safety or that, we want to scan it to see if
Oh.
that's somebody's cat. but we-
Hopefully that never happens again,
Yeah.
but that was super weird.
Yeah, and somebody, there was a missed call or something there too, that
Yeah.
we didn't get it picked up or something happened there too, I remember.
I am trying to get my husband to go out and take care of it.
We also take quite a few calls at the, 273-629 number at Public Works, so if it comes in there, we're gonna handle it.
Yeah, ironically, on that topic, in Waterloo's bid, one of the things they also had was an additional cost for a dispatching fee. When we just, paid a significant, we're already paying for dispatch,
Yes.
so.
One other thing, as Director Birdie mentioned, we've already started this process. We started the first of the year, maybe a little bit before that. Once we knew that we were gonna take over, we just said, all right, let's go, let's do this. And I think right now we've picked up 3 to 5 deer, I don't know exactly, and then several small, possum, raccoons, animals like that, so. So far, so good. And, it's worked out well because we also have our bulk collections that go weekly, or daily, I should say, throughout the week. And those folks are able to slip by an area and grab whatever. And if it's way out of their way, then a supervisor can run out and grab it. And take care of it.
Well, I want to thank you both, all the people involved. This is just one more thing, right? That you guys just take on and appreciate it.
I was gonna ask to clarify, is this all with existing staff? So just
Yeah,
just so we keep in mind, we're adding
Yeah.
something we used
The
to
only
be
thing that we may
outsourcing.
be looking at is a carrier of some sort, for additional equipment, but, so far, so good with existing staff. It's working out well.
Shovels?
We've got plenty of shovels.
Hey,
Slide along, we'll find it.
Yeah, I was,
I've got one more slide.
okay.
So really what we're gonna do throughout the spring is, we're gonna monitor, track our call numbers and types of calls and the hours we're putting into it, kind of getting to the mayor's point. We're gonna also monitor risks and injuries to officers and equipment. There's one thing, if you have an animal with parvo and it gets in the back of a police car, that's not a good thing because then, we're gonna monitor those things. If we have officers getting hurt, we'll take a look at that. What are our practices? What do we need to change? And then we are gonna get a quote from Cedar Bend Humane Society for them to take over animal control on nights and weekends. So we expect to come back to you by the summer with an option saying, it's either going okay or this is not working out. And here's what we suggest do a contract with Humane Society. And then for some of the things, the hoarder houses and things like that, we'll just do a better job of pre-planning with Jamie and her staff. And working with the Humane Society. The Humane Society can have veterinarians come out and help us if we're gonna go to a hoarder house. Truthfully, if the animals have been in there for years and years, another day or till the next morning won't hurt, unless there was a police incident the night before. And then lastly, kind of getting to the mayor's point, our goal is to provide quality animal control, be efficient, be responsible with tax dollars, but also still provide a good service to the citizens. And so we're not making any budget changes now because, we're gonna stop paying Waterloo. We're taking on a few extra costs. There may be some veterinary costs and things like that. And then, so we don't expect any change in the budget here as we're approaching. But we really don't expect any changes unless we're back to you in a couple of months saying, here's a change that we want to make. And so that's really where we're at. This was a quick overview. You can tell Brian, and if you talk to Chief Howard, they've lived this for the last couple of months. If you want to know what every single thing counts or costs and the counts, Mark knows all of it. So.
I think one thing that maybe you didn't cover, or at least it wasn't evident, is when public safety's out and they're called for a dog or a cat or some of those things, there's a lot of man hours and resources that go into getting that. And so we will be coming back to you with a fee schedule to say, hey, it's okay. It's gonna cost you to recover your dog or cat.
For residents.
But currently Waterloo actually hands that, but they collect that along with that.
So Ron and Craig and Brian, are we going to charge residents for picking up an animal?
Yeah.
A dead animal?
Oh,
Like,
no.
I mean,
No, not a dead animal.
okay. Brian, you probably remember the 2 incidents I dealt with you. The one behind a medical place that we piled mulch and let it decay, and then, I mean, how are we gonna handle that now? Because these people, a number of people are used to us. Because the first one, I just got on council and PSO helped me drag the deer out of the ravine. And we brought it up to the shoulder and then we called Humacide and then they picked it up. And how are we gonna deal with that now?
Yeah, they won't pick up on private property.
Right,
Yeah.
typically on private property, we're not going to address that situation. If it's a hazard, of course, we're gonna look at some way we can help. I don't know, what that could be.
Well, charge, I mean,
But typically, yeah, we would, what we did up there, on that private property, probably should have been handled by that owner of that property.
maybe his insurance policy, possibly, I don't know if that. But I remember
It's
the
a
first one,
$100
the deductible,
deductible.
yeah. I remember the first one, the Humane Society didn't wanna pull the deer out of the ravine. They wanted to lime it, let it die. It was alive for a bit and then it died from a hunting wound. And then they were gonna lime it and let the coyotes take care of it, like nature would do in the road ditch, And the property owner had nothing to do with that, so that's when I got some nylon line and tried to pull it myself, and then I don't remember who I called, and then somebody came and joined me and we drug it out, but
my cake story is the one that's gonna make.
yeah.
We're dragging dead deer.
I just,
Deer dragging Daryl and
Talked with the DOT on how they handle in-town roadkill or deceased animals, and what they do is they typically, they'll pick them up if it's a urban area and take them out to a rural area and put them back out in the ditch.
Yeah.
That was simply that, and I think,
nature takes care of it pretty fast.
Kevin's cringing.
Quick question, Brian, on, for residents, just so we can, if we get questions on it, if, say, their animal gets lost, it gets picked up, where would they be going to pick them up then?
or a live animal.
It would still be the main society, just like it is now.
Yeah,
And then the phone number they'll use for everything now is just our dispatch number, the non-emergency dispatch.
Yeah.
number.
Unless we identify it.
and then you're gonna be reaching out to the
If we
owner.
if we catch an animal, we'll scan the animal. If it's identifiable, they'll be contacted, then they can come straight to the public safety department.
okay.
Unless
If
it's
they
an
take a
extended
short
period,
time.
yes,
Yeah.
unless it's an extended period of time, then they'll have to go out to see them. And
Yeah.
that's where the redemption fee would come in when that comes in.
So do you
Yeah,
think this will, you think this will fit within, what was it, 125,000 was the last
135.
item?
I think so. We'll let a little time pass and see really what the numbers are too, as we got the billing from Waterloo, it was hard to sometimes verify because like with dead animals, we would get billed for certain dead animals, but we would know dispatch, let's say we got billed for 400 dead animals. Dispatch might have only handled 250 of those calls. But there could be people who called them direct, called animal control. So I think the first thing is gonna be us, really seeing what the numbers are, because we haven't counted the numbers ourselves since probably 2012 or 13. We always just relied on what people gave us, what the numbers were, so.
So then, I guess, what do we tell a person with a dead deer in their backyard?
They have to take care of it themselves.
Mhm.
They're not
Contact
going on
private.
private property.
It's wildlife that died on their property.
Okay, I'm gonna direct them, Kelly, you'll tell them.
I'll ask my husband to go out. And when there was a dead, squirrel in the backyard the other day, I sent him out to go deal with it. He did.
I pick them over
But
the
if they
tail,
bring
put
it
them
to
in the
the
garbage.
transfer
boom.
station,
Yeah, they have
Right.
that option.
they got that option to take to the transfer station.
Has it been either on the city website or whatever, communicated real well, what that specific number is for the public to call, given these changes?
We have not, so we could do that.
I was just thinking,
862.
something. they-
Well, just the general 291-2515 is dispatch.
County dispatch, so not our public safety center.
Dispatch,
Okay,
yep.
all right.
It'd be great if all the information is cleanly stated in a Courier
Okay.
article.
And the current census.
We'll obviously work with Amanda to get,
Yeah.
we want to have the meeting tonight, we'll work with
Yep.
Amanda to get.
Ryan, you said you guys have picked up 3 to 5 small public safety. Have we headed?
As of today, we said 2 animals per goal.
Okay.
Since we're full.
So it's still pretty low volume. I mean, given only a couple weeks, but
2 weeks.
yeah.
Well, one of the advantages of the big snowstorm, the animals push off the road.
There you go.
That's not- that's not-
Well,
Wait till the snow
You
melts.
should, you should,
In the summer.
They're pre-salted though in Iowa.
you should grow up, you should grow up on a hog farm.
Any last questions or anything? before we adjourn?
So we plan to be back sometime during the spring, just come with another report, really tell you how it's going. If we're heading towards, hey, this is something we need to contract out, or if we think we've got it and then how it impacts our budget, whether we reduce it or need to increase it, so.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, we'll adjourn
Thanks,
till
Brian.
7 o'clock for council.